We begin in Saskatchewan, where the province has stopped charging the federal carbon tax on home heating bills. The move came after Ottawa exempted home heating oil from the federal tax and refused to add any more carve-outs. Withholding the carbon tax is a breach of federal law that could result in fines and even jail time for SaskEnergy executives. Dustin Duncan is the minister responsible for SaskEnergy. He joins me now. Hello, Minister. Happy New Year and welcome to the program.
Happy New Year to you. Thank you for having me.
So if this is meant as a pressure tactic, Ottawa seems to be holding true to its word on no more carbon tax exemptions. So what now?
Well, we wait for the federal government to respond formally to both my request to register as the gas distributor here in Saskatchewan on behalf of the government of Saskatchewan, as well as SaskEnergy has submitted a formal application to deregister as the gas distributor. And so those registrations have been sent and we're waiting for an answer from Ottawa.
Now, if you don't get an answer by the time the carbon tax remittance is due, will you be remitting the tax?
We haven't made a decision at this point. That won't happen until later in February. So we will be remitting as we normally would in January because the money has been collected in the December billing cycle. It will start to show up on people's bills as both a carbon tax as well as a credit from the provincial government as an offsetting credit here in January. So people will, depending on their billing cycle, will no longer see or actually be paying the carbon tax, although they will continue to see it on their bill with a corresponding credit. We'll make that payment, as I said, in January based on what was collected in December. And then when February rolls around, we will make a decision whether or not, as the government, we will be remitting a carbon tax. So we haven't made a final decision on that point.
Okay. Now, Minister, federal law says that corporations that fail to remit the carbon tax could face steep fines, and executives could also even get jail time. Now, you've said you're willing to go to quote-unquote carbon jail for this, but can you really guarantee protection for employees? And how concerned are you about potential legal consequences?
Well, we were significantly concerned enough by the fact that the federal government insists on having within the carbon tax, within the GGPPA Act, the ability to essentially threaten jail time for executives and board members. And so that's why the legislature, before we adjourned before Christmas, we passed unanimously an act that would essentially move the obligations for that one specific part of the federal act from SaskEnergy and obligate the government of Saskatchewan and essentially me as the minister. So what we're trying to do is essentially say if a decision is made to remit or not remit for the essentially February time period, that decision will be made by the government and me as the minister responsible. And so it won't be a decision made by any executive or anybody at the headquarters at SaskEnergy or the board members or any other agent of that corporation. And the corporation is an entity of the province of Saskatchewan. It's created by legislation, by statute. It is a government entity. This will be a government decision. And so what we're trying to do is essentially shield anybody that works at SaskEnergy of those consequences in the event that we decide not to remit the carbon tax. Again, we haven't made that decision whether to remit or not remit. But if that decision is made, it will be mine to make. And so what the bill intends to do is essentially shift that responsibility and the obligations and the consequences to me, and I'm prepared to bear them.
Now, Minister, you say you have some concerns, or you had some concerns. You acknowledge there is risk and a lot of uncertainty. Provincial legislatures have no ability to change the operation of federal laws, and the federal law on this is clear. If you challenge the government, it is likely that Saskatchewan's changes will be deemed illegal. So why continue down this route, given the concerns and given the risk?
So SaskEnergy is an entity of the province. It's created by provincial statute, and so we can change the provincial statute as it relates to SaskEnergy, and that's what we've done. And it was supported unanimously in the legislature, both by the governing Saskatchewan Party as well as the opposition NDP. And so we have the ability, and we have made those changes. Whether or not the federal government essentially recognizes the changes, that is to be seen. We have sent our registration. I have sent my registration to be the gas distributor on behalf of the people of Saskatchewan. SaskEnergy has sent their notice to delist or deregister as the gas distributor. It'll be up to ultimately the minister responsible for national revenue. We're awaiting the minister's decision on this, and so we'll continue to wait. And we're hoping to hear an answer from the minister shortly, and that will cause us to make a number of decisions after that. But until that time, we don't have that certainty, and we're looking for that certainty so that we can, again, this is all about providing fairness to people of Saskatchewan that to date do not have that same carbon tax fairness as been given to people in Atlantic Canada. That's really what we're asking for.
All right. On a related note, I want to ask you, what assurances can you give the people of your province that this is not just a pressure tactic and that it will improve their lives if you do have to go through with it?
Well, it's going to save significant dollars for people on their SaskEnergy bill and Sask Power bills for those people that use electricity to heat their homes this winter. So it's going to save hundreds of dollars for people that use natural gas each year. It will provide that affordability relief that people are looking for. But again, it will provide that fairness for people in Saskatchewan that are not provided by the federal government, that has not been provided by the Prime Minister. When that carbon tax relief was provided to people largely in Atlantic Canada that use home heating fuel, all we asked for was that the same treatment be given to all people in Canada and including in Saskatchewan. And so, you can call it a pressure tactic if you want. What this is going to do is provide immediate relief for people on their natural gas bills and their power bills come January 1st. That relief is being provided. Whether or not the federal government will essentially recognize that and give us the same fairness, that's really for them to decide and for the Prime Minister to make that decision.
Well, on that note, Minister, you estimate this move will save Saskatchewan families about $400 a year. According to Ottawa, the average Saskatchewan family of four gets back $1,360 per year on carbon tax rebates. Plus, there will be a 20% top-up for rural families starting this year. If you don't pay the tax, these rebates will go down or could go down. So will Saskatchewan families really be better off?
Well, they will be better off because the Parliamentary Budget Office actually says that Saskatchewan families pay in excess of $600 more in carbon tax than they actually get back from the rebates.
And they get the largest net gain from carbon price.
But the other thing to keep in mind, though, is that when the federal government announced that carbon tax relief was going to come to Atlantic Canadian families on home heating oils, they didn't also reduce the rebate. So the federal government is in charge of determining the rebate. That's not the province. That's not SaskEnergy. That's not Sask Power. The federal government decided to double the rural top-up at the same time as providing a rebate to people in Atlantic Canada, while at the same time exempting them from the carbon tax. So the two do not have to equal. In your question, you asked, could it or would it? That would really be for the federal government to decide. And again, it goes back to fairness. Why would they penalize people in Saskatchewan by reducing their rebate if the government of Saskatchewan makes this move by providing that rebate relief or carbon tax relief on their SaskEnergy or Sask Power bills when they're not doing that for Atlantic Canada? They didn't reduce the rebate. And in fact, they topped it up. They doubled it for rural residents, while at the same time exempting them from paying the carbon tax. So the two, I don't think, go hand in hand.
All right, Minister. And on that note, we are out of time. I really want to thank you for joining me today.
Thanks for having me.